The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on Nellis Air Force Base as Captain Jake Redwing pulled his battered Ford pickup into the pilot's parking lot. Through the shimmering heat waves, he could see a cluster of aviators gathered around something in the distance, their laughter carrying across the tarmac like coyotes howling at prey. Jake killed the engine and sat for a moment, his calloused hands still gripping the steering wheel. At 32, he was one of the oldest captains in the squadron, a fact his fellow pilots never let him forget. But it wasn't his age that made him the unit's favorite target. It was everything else. He was Apache, full-blooded Mescalero Apache, raised on the reservation in New Mexico by his grandmother after his parents died in a car accident when he was 7. While other kids at the academy came from military dynasties with last names that adorned buildings and runways, Jake had clawed his way through on scholarships, part-time jobs, and a stubborn refusal to quit that his grandmother had beaten into his soul with her stories of their ancestors. As he stepped out of his truck, Jake's eyes found what had drawn the crowd. His F-15 Eagle sat on the flight line, looking decidedly different from the sleek, well-maintained birds surrounding it. The paint was faded and patchy. Panel gaps were visible even from here. It was an older model, purchased from a military surplus auction after budget cuts had forced the squadron to stretch every dollar. Major Brett Cunningham spotted Jake approaching, and his perfectly white smile spread across his tanned face. Brett was everything Jake wasn't. Tall, blonde, from old Virginia money, and flying the newest F-15EX in the fleet, fresh from Boeing with all the latest avionics. Well, look who finally showed up, Brett called out, his voice dripping with mock enthusiasm. We were just admiring your ride, Redwing. Tell me, did that thing actually pass the safety inspection? Or did you trade some turquoise jewelry to get it signed off? The other pilots laughed. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Brett's wingman and faithful shadow, nearly doubled over. Even Captain Sarah Chun, normally professional to a fault, couldn't suppress a smirk. Jake walked past them without responding, his weathered flight bag slung over his shoulder. He had learned long ago that defending himself only fed their appetite for mockery. Come on, Redwing, don't be like that, Brett continued, falling into step beside him. I'm just saying, some of us take pride in our equipment. That bucket of bolts looks like it belongs in a museum. Or maybe a junkyard. Actually, knowing your people's casinos, maybe you could stick some slot machines in the cockpit and turn a profit. The comment hung in the air like smoke from a wildfire. A few pilots shifted uncomfortably, but no one said anything. They never did. Jake stopped and turned to face Brett. Up close, the difference between them was stark. Brett's flight suit was crisp and tailored, his boots gleaming. Jake's flight suit was worn soft from countless missions, patches sewn on by his own hand, boots scuffed from years of use. You done, Major? Jake asked quietly, his dark eyes meeting Brett's blue ones without flinching. Brett's smile widened. Oh, I'm just getting started. You know what the guys are calling your plane? The reservation reject. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Almost as good as your call sign. Jake's call sign was Chief, a designation he hadn't chosen but had been stuck with since flight school. Every time someone used it, every time it crackled over the radio, it was a reminder that he would always be different, always be other. Briefings in 10 minutes, Jake said evenly, turning away. Try not to be late for once. He walked toward the hangar, feeling their eyes on his back, hearing the renewed laughter. Inside the cool darkness of the maintenance bay, he found Senior Master Sergeant Tom Kowalski lying under the Apache's fighter, wrench in hand. Morning, Captain, Tom called out, sliding out on his creeper. His face was smudged with grease, his coveralls stained from a career spent keeping aircraft in the air. Don't listen to those peacocks out there. This bird's got good bones. Tom was 60, 2 years from retirement, and had been maintaining aircraft since before Jake was born. He was one of the few people on base who treated Jake like an equal. She ready for today's exercise? Jake asked, running his hand along the fuselage with something like affection. Tom wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. Engines purring like new. Avionics are solid. Sure, she's not pretty, but pretty doesn't win fights. You ask me, A pilot who can make magic with surplus equipment is worth 10 of those hotshots who need every advantage to stay airborne. Jake allowed himself a small smile. Thanks, Tom. The sergeant clapped him on the shoulder. Go show them what a real warrior looks like, son. As Jake headed to the briefing room, he didn't know that today would be the day everything changed. That the largest red flag exercise in a decade was about to begin. That 12 enemy aircraft would soon be hunting him. And that his supposedly inferior, auction-bought, reservation reject of a fighter would become a legend whispered about in ready rooms from Nellis to Langley. All he knew was that he was tired of being mocked, tired of being underestimated, and ready finally to show them who Jake Redwing really was. The briefing room fell silent as Colonel Patricia Moss entered, her silver eagles gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the red flag exercise parameters, the most ambitious air combat training operation Nellis had seen in years. Gentlemen and ladies, this is not a game, Colonel Moss began, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. We have 12 aggressor aircraft inbound, flown by some of the best pilots the Navy and Marine Corps have to offer. Their mission is simple: eliminate every one of you. Your mission is to survive and complete your objectives. Jake sat in the back row, his notepad open, absorbing every detail. Brett and his crew occupied the front, their body language radiating confidence bordering on arrogance. Flight assignments, the colonel continued, pulling up a roster. Major Cunningham, you'll lead Alpha Flight with the newest aircraft. Your job is primary interdiction. Brett nodded smugly, already picturing his name on the top of the kill board. Captain Redwing, Colonel Moss's eyes found Jake in the back. You'll fly solo as Beta Element. Your role is combat air patrol on the southern sector. A murmur rippled through the room. Solo patrol was typically a punishment detail, the least prestigious assignment, reserved for pilots who couldn't be trusted in formation or weren't considered essential to the main fight. Brett turned in his seat, making sure his voice carried. Makes sense, Colonel. Wouldn't want that antique falling out of formation and causing a mid-air. Better to keep him out of the way where he can't hurt anyone. Laughter erupted. Even some of the senior officers chuckled. Is there a problem, Major Cunningham? Colonel Moss asked coldly. No, ma'am, Brett replied, his smile never wavering. Just noting the wisdom of the assignment. Jake felt heat rising in his chest but kept his expression neutral. This was how it always went. The meaningful missions went to the Golden Boys while he got the scraps, the patrols nobody wanted, the tasks designed to keep him busy and irrelevant. After the briefing, Jake headed to the locker room to suit up. He was alone, strapping on his G-suit when Brett and Marcus walked in. Their conversation clearly intended for his ears. $20 says Redwing doesn't even see action today, Marcus said, opening his locker. 20? I'll go 50 that he lands with full missiles, Brett replied. The aggressor birds won't even bother with him. Why waste energy on a target that's not a threat? Jake finished checking his harness and stood. As he walked past them toward the door, Brett called out one last time. Hey, Chief, try not to embarrass us too badly out there. Okay? Some of us actually have careers to worry about. Jake paused at the threshold, his hand on the doorframe. He didn't turn around, didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. But something inside him, something that had been compressed and buried under years of mockery and marginalization, began to crack open. Today was going to be different. He could feel it in his bones. The canopy closed over Jake with a hydraulic hiss, sealing him into the cockpit of his weathered F-15. The smell of old leather, hydraulic fluid, and countless missions filled his lungs. Through his helmet, he heard the tower clearing Alpha Flight for takeoff, Brett's voice cocky and casual over the radio as his formation of 4 gleaming fighters roared down the runway. Beta Element, you're cleared for departure, the tower controller said. Good hunting, Captain. Roger that, Jake replied, advancing the throttles. The twin Pratt and Whitney engines responded with a thunderous roar that he felt in his chest. Whatever cosmetic flaws his aircraft had, Tom Kowalski had been right about one thing. The heart of this machine was pure fire. The Eagle lifted off the runway, and Jake banked south toward his assigned patrol sector. Below him, The Nevada desert stretched endlessly, a landscape of rust and gold that reminded him of home, of his grandmother's land, of long summers spent learning to track and hunt with his uncles. Beta element entering patrol zone, he reported, his radar sweeping the empty sky. Copy Beta, the controller acknowledged. Alpha flight is engaging targets to your north. Remain on station. Jake settled into a lazy racetrack pattern at 25,000 feet. Through his canopy, he could see the contrails of the main engagement far to the north, white scratches against the perfect blue. Brett and his wingmen were probably racking up simulated kills right now, their gun cameras recording footage they'd replay in the debrief with self-satisfied grins. Suddenly, his radar warning receiver screamed to life. Multiple contacts, low altitude, fast movers coming from the south. Jake's eyes snapped to his display. Not just multiple contacts, 12 of them. Every single aggressor aircraft had bypassed the main force and was racing straight toward the base. It was a feint. Alpha flight had been suckered north while the real attack came from Jake's sector. Tower, Beta element has 12 bandits inbound from the south, low-level, high-speed, Jake called out, his voice calm despite the adrenaline dump hitting his system. They're going for the base. There was a pause. Beta element, say again? 12 enemy aircraft coming in fast. Request permission to engage. Another pause, longer this time. Beta, you are 1 aircraft against 12. Alpha flight is too far out of position. Recommend you evade and… Jake didn't wait for the rest. He rolled inverted and pulled, diving toward the incoming formation like a hawk spotting prey. Every instinct his grandmother had taught him, every lesson about patience and timing and striking from where your enemy least expects it, crystallized in this moment. If you're out there watching this, hoping to see the underdog get his moment, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next is going to rewrite everything they thought they knew about Jake Redwing. The 12 aggressors were spreading into attack formation when Jake came screaming out of the sun above them. Unseen, unexpected, and absolutely ready. The hunt was on. Jake's first missile shot caught the aggressor lead completely off guard. The simulated AIM-120 locked onto the Navy F/A-18 before the pilot even knew Jake was there. The radio crackled with the kill confirmation, and suddenly 11 heads swiveled, searching for the threat they hadn't seen coming. Splash 1, Jake called coolly, already maneuvering. His fingers danced across the controls with a fluidity born from 10,000 hours in the cockpit, most of them spent making outdated equipment perform miracles. The aggressors scattered, trying to reform, but Jake was already inside their decision loop. He had studied their tactics for weeks, memorized their patterns, understood their doctrine. While Brett had been polishing his jet and telling war stories at the officers' club, Jake had been in the vault reviewing gun camera footage and mission reports. He rolled hard left, pulling 7GS, his vision narrowing but never graying out. Another tone, another lock, another Fox 3 call. Splash 2. What the hell? Someone shouted over the radio. Where is he? The aggressors were good, some of the best pilots in naval aviation, but they were rattled. Their perfect ambush had turned into chaos. Jake exploited every blind spot, every moment of confusion, using the desert floor as a backdrop that made his older aircraft harder to track on radar. He came up under a pair of F-16s trying to bracket him, popped above them at a ridiculous angle of attack that his fly-by-wire system barely held together, and fired twice in rapid succession. Splash 3. Splash 4. Beta element. What is your status? The tower controller's voice was electric with disbelief. Engaging, Jake replied, grunting through another high-G turn. His aircraft groaned and protested, metal stressed to its limits, but she held together. Tom Kowalski's maintenance logs might not look pretty, but every rivet and bolt was exactly where it needed to be. The remaining aggressors were trying to disengage now, recognizing they'd walked into a buzzsaw. But Jake had altitude, energy, and position. He pressed his advantage ruthlessly. 5th kill. 6th kill. His ammunition counter ticked down as simulated missiles found their marks with mechanical precision. Somebody help us out here, an aggressor pilot shouted. This guy is everywhere. Jake's breathing was steady, controlled, his movements economical. No wasted energy, no panic, just pure execution. This was what his grandmother had taught him about hunting. Patience to wait for the right moment, then absolute commitment when that moment arrived. 7th kill. 8th kill. The aggressors were breaking in all directions now. Their formation shattered. Their mission failed. Jake tracked 2 more through a canyon, their altitude advantage gone, their tactics reduced to pure survival. 9th kill. 10th kill. The Admiral turned to Thornton. Captain, I am hereby ordering the implementation of the Morrison Protocol across all Atlantic carrier groups. Low-altitude anti-submarine tactics will become standard training effective immediately. Thornton's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. Nimitz faced Jack again. Your court-martial is dismissed. Furthermore, you are promoted to commander and assigned as chief anti-submarine warfare instructor for the Atlantic Fleet. You will train every pilot who hunts U-boats, and you will do it your way. Jack felt the weight of 3 months lift from his shoulders. He had risked everything, his career, his freedom, his life, and somehow he had won. But it was not really about winning. It was about those sailors in the water, those convoys that made it home, those families who would not receive telegrams saying their sons were lost at sea. Thank you, sir. After the briefing, Thornton approached him privately. The Virginia gentleman looked older somehow, worn down by a war that moved faster than his procedures could adapt. Morrison, I owe you an apology. I was wrong. I let protocol blind me to effectiveness. Men died because I could not see past the manual. Jack extended his hand. We are all learning as we go, Captain. This war does not give us time to be perfect. Thornton shook it firmly. Teach them well, Commander. Make sure my mistake does not get repeated. That evening, Jack stood on deck with Danny, watching the sun set over an ocean that felt a little less dangerous than it had a week ago. The kid from the Bronx was grinning. A telegram from his mother clutched in his hand, saying she had heard about their heroics on the radio news. We really did it, sir. 5 U-boats in 1 week. They are calling you the Atlantic Ghost. Jack smiled, thinking of his father back in Port Clyde, probably listening to the same news broadcast while mending his fishing nets. The old man would be proud, not because his son had become famous, but because he had stayed true to what he had been taught. Patience, instinct, respect for the ocean. The war was far from over, but tonight, the Atlantic belonged to them. December 1945. Port Clyde, Maine. Jack Morrison stood on the same dock where his father had taught him to fish 25 years ago. The war was over. Germany had surrendered. Japan had fallen. The Atlantic Ocean, once a graveyard for thousands of Allied sailors, was finally at peace. He was 34 now, with gray threading through his dark hair, and a Navy Cross pinned inside a box in his duffel bag. He had trained over 300 pilots in his techniques during the remaining war years. Together, they had sunk 47 U-boats and saved countless convoys. The Morrison Protocol had become standard doctrine, taught at every naval aviation school in America. Danny Costa had survived the war too, earning his own promotion and returning to the Bronx to marry his childhood sweetheart. They wrote letters every month. Still bonded by that night, they had stolen an Avenger and changed the course of history. Earl, the old Texas mechanic, had retired with full honors. Captain Thornton had written Jack a personal letter 6 months before the war ended, admitting that learning to adapt had made him a better officer. He died 3 weeks after VE Day, heart attack on the bridge of his ship. He went out serving exactly how he would have wanted. Jack's father appeared at the end of the dock, older and grayer but still strong, still carrying that same weathered face that had read oceans for 50 years. They embraced without words, the kind of hug that said everything language could not. You did good, son. Real good. I learned from the best, Jack replied. They walked back toward town together, past the memorial that now bore the names of Port Clyde men who had not come home. 17 names. 17 fewer than there would have been if that convoy had gone down. Jack touched the cold stone, saying a silent prayer for the ones who were not as lucky. That evening, over his mother's clam chowder and his father's stories, Jack felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Peace. Real peace. Not just the absence of war, but the presence of purpose fulfilled. He had trusted his instincts when the world told him to follow the rules. He had risked everything to save lives. and it had mattered. The trainer playing tactics that got him grounded had ended up saving thousands. Sometimes the manual is wrong. Sometimes you have to fly your own way. If you made it this far, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking this journey with Commander Jack Morrison. His story reminds us that courage is not about following orders blindly, but about standing up for what you know is right, even when everyone doubts you. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Drop a comment telling me what kind of story you want to hear next, maybe another war hero, or a different kind of underdog triumph. And please, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next incredible true story of courage, sacrifice, and redemption. Until next time, keep fighting for what matters.